And we're live. Hey, everybody, we are live, and it is my singular pleasure to introduce Chris Giunchigliani. She is former president of the Nevada Education Association, uh, Clark County Education Board, assembly person, and Clark County commissioner. And I couldn't think of anybody better to talk about politics in the area we lovingly call Sin City in Las Vegas after the Raiders deal was consummated and the Raiders moved, and now we've got the A's and SB 209, SB 509. I'm sorry, there's all these SBs running around in my head. Yeah, thanks. And Chris, what do you think about this bill and what's going on politically that may kill it or pass it? Yeah.
Well, I've made no bones that I'd never supported the public financing of the stadium for the Raiders, and I still believe I'm right on the public policy side of that. And I'm in the same place as relocation of the A's. And it's not whether we should have sports or not have sports. I grew up in Chicago. I'm still a Cubs fan, but that said, these are billionaires and they don't need public financing. We can't even, well, a little game was played with this one. They're going to create a homeless board, and $5 million is going to be set aside to help with building some transitional housing. Is it needed? Yes, but we don't need them to give away 180 million in public tax, or 380 million in public tax dollars. If we had that money, then why aren't we building our own transient housing then, if that's the case for the homeless population? But that's a buy-off to get some people to feel good about what their decision will be. The bill has not been voted on as we speak. They sign a die at midnight, so the time is very crunchy. The film giveaway also has not been voted on yet. They're still negotiating with the governor with regard to whether or not to give private schools public tax dollars. So you've got all that in the mix right now. So part of it's going to come down to logistics of having to properly move a bill from one house to the other, have it signed, concurred, amendments, or whatever might happen. And they may not be able to do that by midnight. So it may very well be that they'll have to call a special one-day session in order to complete whatever business did not get finished tonight. That said,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No.
I was just
saying. You finish first. Yeah, you finish first, please. Go ahead.
Going ahead, it really, to me, I'm a policy wonk. Even though I did 16 years in the legislature, 12 in the commission, I do think that we have a responsibility as a public servant to really look at the policy and not get caught up as much as you want to in the politics side of it. So to me, just laying it on its face, all statistics, and you know this because you covered it this way, not a single stadium giveaway has panned out in the dollar amount that everybody was promised. So if you look just at the numbers, it doesn't pencil out. It doesn't meet the return on investment that comes into play. I believe one person at the hearing even mentioned, they were promised that 19,000 laborers would be hired, or working men and union folks. And that's wonderful. But at the Raiders Stadium, it was less than 2,700 that were actually hired. So you inflate things and you tantalize. And I'm a union person. I believe in unions should be the ones building any of these projects as far as that's concerned. And they did an interesting thing in the bill as well to allow first-year apprentices to be able to work. That's a good idea, but that's a policy decision. You don't need the excuse of a stadium bill to do that kind of public policy. So, the devil's always in the details, as you well know.
Question: how did we get to a point where, first of all, you were running against Steve Sisolak for governor, if I recall, and Steve won, but then he became our governor, but then he lost. What the heck happened?
Well, we had a couple. You had Steve running for re-election, and you had Senator Masto was running as well for her re-election seat. Those were the two big prominent races that were going. I lost to Steve in the primary by about 20,000 votes statewide. That said, what happened? It was, I think people were still angry about COVID and the shutdowns. I think they wanted someone to blame. I don't think Steve was liked. And in politics, there's a personality, there's a relationship that you look for. And I don't think he was liked by both Democrats or Republicans. And that may have been part of what added to his downfall. But I think early on, it wasn't really selected wrongly. I believe he was run by the Washington, D.C. politicos, and they did not understand and have a good sense on how Nevadans work. We're still small town. It's still who you know. It's very different than D.C. And I don't think that they did a good job of messaging how difficult it was to govern during COVID. And, you know, Steve and I have our differences. I thought he did a pretty good job overall. And so, but that was part of the machinations that were going on.
Because I'm wondering if Steve had been, how do you think things would have been different even with the Athletics in this situation if Steve had been governor instead of Governor Lombardo?
He would have given away more. I think it was, I think Governor Lombardo, and I know his chief of staff, Ben Kekeffer, they're reasoned individuals, and they weren't just grasping at give me the attention, give me the numbers. Steve was whole hog on the Raiders. He even flew up as a county commissioner during the special session when Governor Sandoval had proposed all of that. So I think he would have snapped onto that and actually given away more, gone with the first $500 million that they asked for, and not have negotiated. I think a better funding mechanisms this bill has than what you had with the Raiders Stadium. So I think at least, and I do have to give it to leadership in the Assembly and the Senate. I think Yeager and Cannizzaro have done a good job of making sure, because they've got caucus members that are not supportive. Now, how they may wind up voting is a different story, but they have not played any games. They've been pretty forthright about making sure that the policy doesn't do harm. They've gotten record funding for public schools so far this session. I will commend them for that part of it. So even though this gives them a 30-year not paying property tax, and that affects schools, police, and fire, because that's how we're publicly funded in Nevada, it's not as big a giveaway as it was originally started out to be.
How is it that politics have changed? Is it the pandemic that forced all of these changes, and it's where it seems like Nevada is now considered a purple state or a blue state, whereas it was red state when you and I were talking about the Raiders? Am I right about that?
Actually, right now, the Republican Party has been in disarray. They've been fighting amongst each other for about 2 years, from their local Clark County caucus to the state caucus. So that's been part of it. But at the same time, so were the Democrats. And so the Democrats were having to fight. Two different individuals took over the state and the county party. And they were, back in the day, they were Bernie folks, okay? And so they were not necessarily people, they were more progressively based as far as that's concerned, and not as moderated. So we both had our structural infighting going on. But just recently, we just took back the state chairmanship and the state board of directors, because the money was spent and misspent. And there's questions. I'm on the budget committee. We have a meeting next week or this week on it, because we really do have to realign our house. So that's two things going on. Then in addition to that, with voter registration, they passed a law to allow, well, they were able to register to vote at DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, but they did some changes last session, so that if you forget to mark what party, they automatically mark you as nonpartisan. So the nonpartisan numbers exceed the Republicans, but are closing in on the Democratic side of it as well. So that, not just registration, but that group who don't have a party affiliation are very different people to talk to. You don't know necessarily what's engaging them. And so I don't think that either party has taken the time to really talk to the nonpartisans about what are their issues and their concerns, other than they just don't want to belong to a party. And part of it is we don't teach civics really in our high schools anymore. So a lot of the youth don't really know
Yeah.
what's a Democrat, what's a Republican. You know, I went to polls this last two times around because I never, as an elected, you're not permitted to do it. And I said, you know, I need to see what our people are doing internally. And what a wonderful system. It worked well. It was wonderful. And for the naysayers, I'm like, have you ever bothered to volunteer? Because if you really do, you see from the inside how everything works, and it works pretty darn well. And that's across the United States, I think. That said, the youth, I still remember young people coming in, they're like, Miss, what's a libertarian? What's a Republican? What's a Democrat? You have to be impartial. And so we're talking like, what do we say? And so we came up with, if you like Trump, you're a Republican. If you like Biden, you're a Democrat. If you like so-and-so, you're a libertarian. And just to kind of, so at least they maybe had a name to connect it through in that way. But it is an issue of education. You know, over the years in the United States, we have watered down our civics and ethics legislation and our education.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's, you know, and you can't rely on parents to be able to take the time to do that. I mean, we found that during COVID. God bless the parents. But I think they're now saying, oh my gosh, I would never want to be a teacher because I had to do this with my kids, you know, from kindergarten to high school in some cases in the household.
You should talk to Richard Dreyfuss. I interviewed him twice in 2009 and 2010 and 2011.
Uh-huh.
He talked the same thing. He was talking about then drunk on wine. He was just off
Just go.
about civics were not taught. And he says it was a real crisis then. And you're absolutely right. It's more of a crisis now, right?
Absolutely. It is, because if it's not on a test, we're not teaching it. It's not in the curriculum. And you still have, most textbooks are written and produced out of Texas. They are more whitewashed than anything else. There's not a reflection of Native American, Hispanic contributions of women, African American. It's not in the textbook because you have to look at who's writing it and what they feel in content. And then you have to look at the requirements for testing to graduate or to pass from one grade level to the next. That's all subjective as well. And so to me, I think a great disservice is being done. I mean, you see the banning of books back across the United States now. You see, you know, it's just, it's mind-boggling to me how, not stupid, but how ignorant people are, in some cases, are choosing to be.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. It is. Surprising. Yeah, as my mom was saying, it's surprising. It is surprising and disappointing. And with all that, yeah. And so, because people seem to play off the edges, it reminds me. I was telling someone to read a book called "Anti-Intellectualism in American Life" by Richard Hofstadter back in from 1956, right? And it just seems like it applies today. And so I'm wondering, with all of that, are people intellectually interested in understanding what is going on in the legislature or with the bill or anything else?
I think no. I think the general public probably has some feelings, and there was opposition that called in and showed up at the hearing, unlike what happened during the midnight special session, you know, for the Raiders part, where nobody had access. I would say don't underestimate their enthusiasm. They're just busy trying to make a living, make sure their kids get to school, prepare food, take care of mom and dad. All of that's going, life happens. And so it's not that people don't care. It's just that where's the priority? Plus Carson City, you know, they're 400 miles away. And so there's a disconnect, although they do a good job on calling in and how you can communicate. They've done a marvelous job, because I've had to testify on stuff over Zoom, and it's been very well done, I have to say. That's one thing probably good that came out of COVID, is everybody had to really rethink how they give people access to information. But that said, I think they just go, it's a done deal. It's, you know, we're just going to get screwed with it. And that's the way it's going to go.
who are some of the powers that we should be watching when we look at what the legislature does now?
I would say definitely Governor Lombardo. It's a new role for Joe. And I don't say that disrespectfully, but being a sheriff in a county is very different than running a state with, I don't know even how many agencies now, 200, 300 agencies and departments, and how the funding structure goes and so forth. So I'd say, but he does his homework and he does ask questions, and I will give him credit for that. And I've gotten that from both parties, from folks. I think Speaker Yeager is doing a very good job. And I know Steve, but I wasn't sure if his kind of laid back personality would work for him, but his caucus loves him. He's very inclusive. And I think, and he's not been bombastic. He doesn't threaten people and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's been a steady course. And then Senator Canizero on the other side, God bless her. She just had a baby 6 days ago. And you know what? And, as Ginger Rogers says, she wears her stilettos, it's like, but she does. But she's been able to keep her caucus together. Their problem is they're one vote shy of overriding any vetoes. And so that's the dilemma. They have the veto power in the assembly, but one vote short on the Senate side. So that makes you have to look at more compromise than maybe you want to do in the long run. I would say Danielle Monroe Marino, who took over as Ways and Means from Maggie Carlton. That's a tough job. And she's our new state chair of the Democratic Party. That's who we elected. She's African-American, retired corrections officer. So she understands prison systems and budgets that go along with that, and the needs of both the working men and women there, as well as the prisoners that are assigned to them. And so I think she just brings a different perspective that comes into play. I haven't been up there in a while. I'm not sure who all the winners or shakers are. I'll have to have people over for dinner and get the scoop really down the road. But I do think that leadership-wise, they've done a pretty good job of making sure that information is power. And sometimes in caucuses, my late husband started the caucuses, actually, the Assembly Democratic. So if you don't provide information, you're going to have people going off the planks or, bad mouthing you and whatever else goes on. I've not heard that that's been part of how this session goes, which is good.
Yeah. Now, I'm really impressed about how activist this legislative body seems compared to what I've seen. Not that I've seen a lot, obviously, but during the Raiders, right? I mean, it almost seems like it's night and day.
It is. But again, it's because session's going on and they're up there and they have access. The special session was called for the Raiders Stadium, and it was just those that could fly up, do the dirty deed in 2 or 3 days, and then be out of there. So you didn't have that voice that was there. I would say, yes, Battleborn Progress has been phenomenal. Progressive Leadership Alliance in Nevada, ACLU, NAACP is revitalized. We've got a new president there. So it's been, and it's hard to go up against your labor friends, because that's where the differences of opinion have been coming down on, because they want jobs. Well, I understand that, but don't get promised something that's not going to happen. Number one. Number two is short-term jobs, and you're bringing in travelers. Number three, they can't even find enough construction workers right now in Las Vegas to build housing. So where are you going to take? Yeah, so you're going to add to our lack of housing inventory just to build some public giveaway on a stadium. There's a balancing act that comes in. But I think that's really the difference, is the session has actually gone on. It is in play. Therefore, it's not done at late at night, kind of like the last time around.
Hey, let me ask this another way. It seems like over the past 4 years, in particular, last 3, maybe due to the pandemic, there have been people who complain that the Strip in particular has become less safe to be on. There have been some wild incidents like that knifing.
Yeah.
And is that also affecting how the legislature is thinking, not just with the Strip itself, but the climate in general because of the pandemic and the crime that we've had? Or is it that bad?
Good question. pandemic really messed with people's heads. I mean, we have long-term trauma for families, kids, the kids especially. I don't think we're still out of the dark in any city around the United States, or
I
actually
agree
around the
with
world. I mean, it affected, right? And so that isolation that occurred has not been worked through yet. So I think anger, when you have big crowds, it's people, but we have too many people that have access to guns. And you don't need a gun, okay, in my opinion. And
right.
you don't need to take a gun on the bus to get to the strip to threaten somebody because you're ticked off at them, okay? I go back to fisticuffs if that's the case, because you settle problems differently. You know, if you make something easily accessible, it's easier to do harm with that. We have 230 mass shootings so far in the United States this year. That is, why is Congress not acting? The governor vetoed several gun bills, unfortunately, which would have helped the situation. I think I think the strip is still safe. We put the bollards in when I was still on the county commission because one person drove a car off of it. It went berserk over it, but okay, they always, it's people making policy that have never bothered to walk the strip, let alone know how people function in that realm. Now you're going to have Formula One coming in. There's a lot of stuff that's coming. And so you bring, I mean, we're still the place of the worst massacre ever. And that was, oh my God, 5 years ago.
1 October. Yep.
Still, 1 October. And hope we learn from that, but you never know when someone's got a mental health issue that's going to trigger. And then if they have access to a knife or a gun, it's unfortunate. We had some young women that were doing the little photo things on the strip, and one got killed and one was stabbed. I mean, and again, it's wrong place, wrong time. I don't know if you could even prepare against that. That's why I believe in free speech and very much a proponent, but we did have to deal with some of the buskers that were on the strip because they interfered with how Metro was trying to patrol and causing distractions that were there. So they can still, the county came up with a system that is legal, and ACLU supported that mainframe. So we weren't taking anybody's free speech away, but doing it more importantly. And before I left the county, I created a diversion court for the corridor so that if you got ticketed by Metro, you could go to this court. And if you agreed to go into services, if you agreed to do X, Y, and Z, then you were no longer charged with anything that was torn up and thrown away. That was working pretty well. I don't know if it's still in play or not. But to me, I wanted to expand it then into other areas, because to me, that's really our homeless component. Is you have a lot of people with mental illness. They're not going to know to ask for help, or they're doing drugs or blowing dirty. And so Catholic Charities won't take them. None of them will. Rescue Mission, you have to blow clean. Well, hello, they're addicted. So let them in and then bring the services directly to them and help them then reestablish themselves. But, that's their policies and their boards nationally and internationally. In some cases, that's how they want to do business, and it's short-sighted. Anyway.
Is the healthcare situation as well? Is that better? We experienced that last year because my mom was at Valley for pneumonia, and they really did help her. But on the other hand, also they had this, and I said this to Mark Davis when I saw him at the NFL Spring League meeting, that there needs to be in Nevada what I call an elderly elderly oriented policy where they don't get pushed out, because they were trying to push my mom out, and I had to actually threaten to text, and I text Steve Sisolak because I had his text. I mean, I was in terror. I went to a terror because that's my mom. I didn't appreciate the hospital. And I even had a young lady who was there because she threatened to kill herself. She was the roommate on camera on Zenny. Yeah, gave a whole testimony about I'll send it to you. Gave a whole testimony about how she was treated, how they talked to my mother, and I had to basically explain to them. I had to get one nurse fired because she was racist. it was fun because I love going to war when it has to do with my mom. Okay, I had to be honest with you. I was
Exactly.
having a
Well,
blast.
culinary's been in negotiations with Valley, and I don't know if they're going to wind up going on strike. And that's right now. Working conditions as well.
Mm,
We are all across the United States, and I'm sure in other countries, a shortage not only of nurses but just your doctors, your primary care docs. That's why if you're ever in any trouble, I have a card in my wallet that says "Take me to UMC." I don't care if I'm 10 miles away. I'm going to
mm.
UMC. It's the only county hospital. It's the best hospital. The ER room is the best in the state. The best trauma hospital as well. But that said, you have in the healthcare industry, I mean, HCA, you have to look at them. They are a behemoth, and they own Sunrise, for example, in Las Vegas. But if you go to any HCA, they are a profit making company. So healthcare really should not be about who turns a profit. You know, if they're charging you $20 for a COVID mask and we bought it for 10 cents, that's the game that's played in healthcare, unfortunately. And yes, your mom is probably another one. Get them in, get them out, get them in, get them out, the road revolving door. And I do know that the workers from culinary were bringing up those types of issues that were, because think about it, even the people preparing the meals for the patients, right? They need to have a say-so and feel safe and comfortable. That's a clean process and whatnot. And they're getting the right nutritional needs, and they're respecting their cultural needs that are there as well. But I think nationally, we did not focus on teachers. We did not focus on healthcare workers. And so nationally, we've not been recruiting, graduating, providing incentives. I mean, I could do a lot with 380 billion rather than a stadium. That's where you could fix a lot of your shortages that are going on. You could go into high schools, work with youth, find their areas of interest and plug them into that career path instead of letting them struggle with what do I really want to do, and do early internship programs with them so they're exposed. But I'm going to tell you, I first taught at Jim Bridger 40 plus years ago, and there's 8 of us that are still in town together. We get together monthly, and we're all retired teachers. Not a one of us would go back to the school district with the current superintendent there. Well, he's not a good person.
Whoa, what did he
And
do? What happened?
no one has any faith in him. He came from Florida. He came from a different background. He came from a group called Chiefs in Schools. You should do some research on that. It actually started with Jeb Bush, and they're trying to create their own superintendent pool to insert them into public school systems, to water down the public school system, to move them towards charter and or private. And he's in that background. He's divisive. He's retaliatory. At least that's what I hear from faculty and principals and support personnel. He was fired for 2 weeks, and then my trustee at that time changed her vote 2 weeks later, and so he got double package, great benefits, even higher than what he should have. This is from a man who really has not performed. He's brought in most of his people from out of state. He does a lot of outside contracting. Where follow the money, okay? Always follow the money. And so there's just been concerns on that side of it.
You know, you were talking
Yeah.
about the stadium bond, and I did a calculation because I know how to do bond issues and stuff. And in fact, I always remember that I told Jessica Colvin before it happened that the Raider bond was actually going to go have a problem. Remember that?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So I did an analysis, and what I found interesting is that the amount of money generated from the taxes combination in the sports entertainment district is far in excess of the $261 million bond cost total, right? So I'm thinking, hey, if I'm Jessica Colvin, if I'm Clark County Minders, I'm going to engineer a pass through, and I'm going to basically slide some of that money over to education. Why don't they do that, right? Because I was looking at this stream, and I thought, holy Jesus, you know.
Well, Nevada's very unique. We're not allowed to, by constitution, we can't fund, local governments don't fund schools. And local parents cannot vote for mills, and we did millages back in most other states. By constitution, they are state funded, period. The only thing they can raise money for is school construction. And that's the only thing that's bonded through the school districts. So it's just a unique situation. So even if there was that flush, Jessica couldn't, she'd have to find a legal maneuver to be able to, yeah.
So if I may, this is all a product of Dillon's rule, huh?
Yeah. Well, no, it's literally in the Constitution. Nevada's public school system is funded solely by the state of Nevada. We've tried to change that, but it's hard to explain to the public. It's a nuancey thing, and it's not ever passed to either let them do it locally or whatever. You have to be able to advocate for some things and explain it in a simpler way. In taxes, everybody just goes, no. They don't want to hear about it. So what are you doing with taxes? Vote no. So it's not necessarily a thoughtful process.
Yeah, that's why I'm glad about having this conversation with you, because a lot of people who know, particularly Californians, they look at this situation from a California perspective, right? And don't realize, like myself, I just thought, I'm used to pass-throughs and everything else, but they're really you're sort of hamstrung by the Constitution. You just said that, right?
Yeah, correct. Very much. And that's why, and then we're only funded with what little bit of property tax that you get. We do get a little bit of sales tax, but you generate more for $1 of sales tax than you do on $1 of property tax. And you don't want to raise your property tax so much that you then offset or hurt people being able to purchase a home, right? So, and maintain that home. It's a balancing act. But in Nevada, they did a property tax shift, in the 80s. And we've never been able to get out from under that. So it does not generate enough to run the public school system, period. And so you're always having to beg for money from someplace. Yeah. It's a short-sighted way. I mean, that's just the way the Constitution was written back in the day. But again, to get the public to understand why it needs to be changed is very difficult.
Do you think the A's, I mean, of course, the devil's in the details of how this comes out. But let's just say in general, do you think the A's made a mistake in trying to do this now in Las Vegas at this time, regardless of how this goes?
I would say my brother's a fan. He lives in Roanoke Park, and he's a referee for coach for college and youth sports. But he's a diehard A's fan, and he's like, oh my gosh. But he said, Chris, there were less than 4,000 people at the last game. I think the person that owns them has not been a good manager or a good investor in his own team. They're the lowest paid. They haven't done anything to refurbish. That's not all on Oakland, and that shouldn't be all on Oakland. It's how he manages and trains and facilitates. So he was being arrogant and threatened, using us against them and them against us and all that part of it. And then it went quiet for a while. And that's where I think they almost botched it by coming in too late. They'll get the stadium authority, Steve Hill, and Jeremy will give you whatever numbers you want him to give you. But you have to look, baseball's different. It's 80 games? Something like that in their season?
82 games,
yeah. Okay, you're going to do a covered retractable roof. You'll need that for our heat. But I don't know. Until we get a high-speed train from California to Las Vegas, I don't see the butts and seats panning out for 80 games. And I think they were projecting something like 28.
Well, I think the way I read
it, it'll also be the smallest. It'll be the smallest stadium built.
Right.
I think he's just going to flip it. Once he gets it built, he's like, I'm out of here. I got everything.
Well, the way I read it is I didn't take that the way it was published. I took it as just from the standpoint of my background. I looked at it and I thought, okay, so you're going to have hotels and everything else. And I took the $2.5 million. You see where I'm really headed, right? I need the money.
Well,
But I took the 2.5 million visitor count, and I thought it was for the entire complex, not assuming baseball only, and then you can do it standing room only. That's how I looked at it. So when I heard that, I thought, okay, well, they're going to have what else are they going to have in there, right? That's how I looked at it. That's why I didn't get hung
Yeah.
up on that, you know. Um,
Yeah, I think I think that they glazed over that part of it, because you have to look at how many venues you're going to have.
yeah,
Allegiant was
yeah.
different differently than this is going to be designed, and I
Glad you
just don't
said
know
that.
that you're going
Say
to
that
get
again.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and
Say
they're
that
doing the
again.
tax
I think
increment
that's
fine
a great point.
piece of it. You should take a look
Yep,
at that, because that's your back.
sure.
Yeah,
Definitely will. Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right
and that
about that. And also,
just trying to get up down to Tropicana and Las Vegas Boulevard is going to be a cluster. It's a cluster already. So, that's a put off. How do your people get to work? Because 80% of the people driving to the strip and crossing over are workers. They're all the back of the house people, or the front of the house actually as well. So we
yeah,
don't even
great
have
point.
light rail
Yeah.
I'm like, hello, I've been pushing for light rail forever. It's like, how do you help your workers not have to spend money on two cars, give them one, and a way to get to work where you're not losing an hour each way each day? That's time out of that they're not being compensated for. And now you're going to have another plop right there on that corner. Oh, it's going to be.
Why no light rail? You said that's interesting. I didn't realize you all were trying to get that. I think that'll be excellent for Las Vegas.
Because the strip opposed us, RTC doing that. We had plans. I was trying to get it then on Maryland Parkway, which then you could feed off of Tropicana, Flamingo, and whatnot, going on your east-west corridor, and then start to move light rail that way. But they're just going to do side running buses because it's too expensive right now, because we let all the infrastructure be built up to a place where you can't put a station. You can't. Yeah, we didn't do good planning on that part of it. And I tell people, I said, we have visitors from everywhere in the world, and I have traveled. I've been to 95 countries, so I think I know what I'm talking about. And I ride public transit
85,
everywhere. I just
nice.
did Scotland,
Nice,
and I
nice.
just did public transit all through Scotland. It was so easy. I had to download it on my app, bought my ticket, boom, boom, boom. Why are we not doing that? That's where the majority of our tourists are coming from, are places where they're used to having light rail.
Mm-hmm.
Or trolleys or something other than having to get into a vehicle.
Yeah, light rail I think would be wildly popular. I really do.
That's always my thing. You have people you have electeds making public policy, and they've never even been on a bus. Not even on one of our buses that they manage. Okay. So I probably hold up my C card every time I go, and I get the senior discount. It's $1 each way. So.
So I want to do a little inventory of things that are happening, get your view on that. First of all, I'm personally really excited about MSG Sphere. And I wanted to know what you thought about it's whenever it opens, but
Yeah, when it opens, that was in my district, my old district, and it was a unique project, and I did like it. I was concerned again about traffic, because you have the Venetian emptying out, and you have Wynn emptying out, and then you have condominiums with my seniors were on the backside of the property, so I was worried about how to deal with noise for them, but also how they can ingress and egress. I think they came up with some kind of a plan, but I don't know how it's going to work out. But it's a unique piece. I think it's going to be very, very different. I know that they just recently, unfortunately, had some issues with the seating. They didn't realize, as they were looking at their ticket sales, that some areas are going to be blocked off, that they didn't realize when they added another layer for the staging. So they're going to have to look at design on that part of it. I think that's part of what's slowing it down a little bit. But U2 is great. It'll be a nice kickoff.
I can't wait. And then we have Formula One coming. Formula One.
Yeah. Whoopee. I'm sorry. I could care less. I think it's going to be, if they can, I don't have my roads repaired here. They're going to go ahead and redo the strip for these sons of guns. Oh, give me a break. Okay. So yeah, whatever.
Maybe they should give a car allowance to the poor, like 1,000 new Formula One vehicle. I'm just kidding. I don't know. Actually, it's not a bad idea.
In the old days, we actually had, and I think we still do, we have 20 coupons for senior citizens to have for taxi drivers that they can offset their rides. But I don't know. And it helped. If you need to get to a grocery store, why buy a car? Now you have rideshare, but it helped the taxi cab drivers who were losing out to the rideshare people too. So,
yeah. Something I don't want to forget this, but I can't have this conversation without recalling the impact that the late Sheldon Adelson had on what we're talking about and bringing the Raiders in.
Right.
And that was quite significant. Yeah.
Yeah, he was not well liked, but was he powerful?
No, he wasn't. Right.
And power through much more than anything else. And he owns the RJ, or I mean, he's passed on, but Miriam and his family or her family still have the Review Journal. The Sun is just an insert, basically. And so, yeah, when you control the media and you can make things happen with money if people are aligned with it.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that it doesn't seem like there's that kind of personality anymore. He passed away. Las Vegas Sands is only a fraction of what it used to be. I don't want to say casino waning.
No, you had Steve Wynn, found run out, and rightly so, because of discrimination and sexual issues that were going on there. So he used to be, he was a bully, in my opinion, but he could flout it and used his wealth and name and so forth. But all of our hotels, they're corporate now. There's no more small mom and dad, pop, little ones around, really. Everything's corporate. And so corporations have their stockholders or their shareholders that they have to deal with. And so they tend to be a little bit less flamboyant or weigh in. Because I still remember the former president, MGM, sat in my office. He said, "We agree with you on the Raiders." And then they turned around and went exactly the opposite. Because
really? What happened?
Because they changed the location, which would benefit MGM. Always follow the devil's on.
Yes. That is so. Did they call you and give you a heads up, or how did you find out? Or when you looked at it, you said, "Hey, wait a minute, they were in my office." What happened with that?
I told people the story, but nobody cared because it was already a done deal. So it's like, okay.
History.
People, politicians aren't the only ones, and not many politicians are bought off. I will say that. But business generally can be bought off on stuff. And if you think about it, as a legislator, more often than not, it was one business trying to keep another business from getting started or trying to shut it down. So it was anti-competition, and most pieces of legislation are still that way. So don't tell me it's the politicians. It's a lot of the same other people that have just as much of a problem with ethics.
Chris, when are you going to run again? I mean, I know you're enjoying traveling the world. But you got that fire. Fire is not out. It's still there.
I am an activist at heart. I always have been. I will not say never, but I'm going to be 69 in a few months. And I'm like, you know what? I still miss my late husband, and it's been 8 years, and I still miss him every single day. But I still contribute, but I do it more. I work with LGBTQ and African-American young people, recruiting them for office or how to run campaigns. And so I try to put my fingers in that way. I still volunteer at the schools, do reading week. I take seniors, during a COVID, I was a driver for United Way. I like doing things that build a community. So that's probably where I'll really put most of my focus still.
Yeah. My mom says you're too good to be a politician. She's a great one too.
I was a good elected. I'm very proud of the job that I did for my 28 years. I was constituency based. I was boots on the ground. If somebody called about a problem because the neighbor's dog was barking, I went and visited with the neighbor and tried to mediate it. I passed the trap neuter release for the feral cat women and men. And I did more things that I think helped build the community, like spay neuter laws. Okay, you got to realize your pets are your companions for many of these people, but you got to stop this backyard breeding so we don't have to kill them, So those are things that I worked on as policy, but they make it different in people's lives. And it just made me a better politician, I think, in the long run. So, I'm very proud of what I did.
We have some comments here from our regular viewers. Mark Thompson, I believe, lives in Vegas. He says, I think we will have a new Major League Baseball team. I'm looking forward to attending games here as a local Las Vegas resident. Vegas Mark, who is a contributor, says Vegas is the real economic promised land thanks to sports. He then adds, hours after I mentioned Las Vegas monorail to the ballpark idea yesterday, the RJ mentions it. Are they watching your streams, any? I hope so. Then Mark Thompson adds, we need a light rail, here you go, or trolley system to go from the south end of the strip to downtown Fremont. And then Vegas Mark adds, Mark Thompson, there was a plan, here you go, the plan to do that from Maryland Parkway, connecting Reed Airport, UNLV, Sunrise Hospital, and downtown. I didn't realize that. That you were talking about, right, Commissioner?
I worked on that with RTC, and I really wanted light rail, and I even had a platform right outside of Reed where we would do the drop station before the park there. I said, if you're going to build the park, just don't block this area. So you have to think ahead on this stuff, but it's giving people the will. And at that time, the casinos all went berserko and didn't want anything down. To me, I think the strip really should be pedestrian, have emergency vehicles, and then use that property to move people back and forth in a safe way and make it all pedestrian. You don't need to have cars driving around on it and choking up the traffic, and then a metro can't get through or an ambulance can't get through. And we put the lights on the buttons on the lights so that the ambulance can hit the button and change from a red light, but you're still stuck on Harmon, you can't get any place.
Yeah.
So we really do, as a community, need to look at how we move our people. And the frickin' Tesla underground bullshit is bullshit. Okay, I'm just going to call it and say it what it is. It is a joke. It is not doing anything to benefit the constituents that actually have to drive, get to work or to the grocery store and get stuck, can't get any place. So that don't even get me started.
I'm glad you said that, because someone had made a remark on social media that they should tear down the monorail after the ballpark is built if this gets passed, and use the boring thing. And I was thinking, seriously?
No, not the boring. No, put light rail. The problem with the monorail was antiquated when they put it. It's the same train that you ride at Disneyland. Okay, great. So we do stupid things in Vegas, okay, sometimes. And so, but it blocks our ability to widen roads, to put a lane down the middle because of the concrete structures of where they located.
Right.
You know why it's mostly back of the house? Because as Tom Waits would say, you can't find where the monorail is with a Geiger counter, because the strip did not want it out front. And they fought each other tooth and nail on where the locations would be. So most of them are in the dungeon and they're down in.
Wow.
Because the winds of the world. Hey, Chris, we have landscaping. I said landscaping can be removed and replanted someplace. That's not an excuse to not have a light rail system. Now you have to understand, part of Las Vegas in that corridor is also underground water aquifer. So there's certain places that they can't go down too deeply, but they've got the engineering now that much better that they can handle that part of it. But you have to look at where that location was. The monorail is antiquated. They should use that to become the light rail connector and actually do a true light rail. But the boring company is boring, and you're doing it it's not anything to move anybody. They could have actually put a people mover on Paradise.
Thank
move
you.
People
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. I had that plan. Like, that's a good idea. I'm like, you could do an air conditioning one. There's different ways to do stuff, folks. Anyway, can't fix stupid.
Sounds like Elon Musk was throwing his money around, right? So, or
Sure.
thereabouts.
And
So,
again, you have people making public policy that have never been on a damn light rail or trolley or anything else. And so it's like, oh, this sounds so cool. Coolness is not, it's about how you help your constituents wisely. It's not just the tourists. You have to remember people live here. They serve the tourists. So you got to make it available for them to get around as well and not be able to get to their Smith's grocery store or Albertsons or the, wherever they're Trader Joe's, whatever. You got to look at how you have those traffic jams that back up, and it's an income driven problem too. They should have helped us build that system through RTC, and then every casino owner should have given their employees, as part of their package, free passes to get back and forth to work. There's ways to do incentives, not a giveaway like the stadium to a billionaire.
Right. In fact, tell my viewers, because in the Oakland province, we hear about the mayor all the time, what the mayor says, but in the Las Vegas province, we barely hear from the mayor. I know the reason, but I want you to tell the viewers why that's the case.
Sure. What people don't realize is I live in the city of Las Vegas, and I was a county commissioner. It's weird. But the mayor only is the mayor of the Henderson, North Las Vegas, City of Las Vegas, Boulder City, Mesquite. Okay, so they're elected only in that. The Strip is in the county. It's an unincorporated county. There is no mayor. It's run by the commissioners, and there's 7, and that's it. And I had most of the Strip in my district. Now it's Commissioner Segerbloom, who took my place, and a little bit of Mike McNabb has some, and a few others. But yeah, I'm like the mayor. And that used to be a fight between Carolyn and Sisolak when he was chair of the county.
Oh,
Get
yeah.
out here, Carolyn. Why are you giving a key to the city? Because you're in the county. Oh my gosh. But it is weird. But when I was doing my spay-neuter law, I had to go to each jurisdiction to see if they would adopt the same procedure. I said, because a dog or cat crossing south side of Sahara doesn't know that now I'm in the county. But if I'm on the north side of Sahara, I'm in the city. I mean, they don't know. We do things in a more collaborative manner rather than whose fiefdom it is. Yeah, it ain't like the mayor of Chicago. I'll tell you.
Who's going to be the next mayor, having said all that? Will it matter?
I ran in 2011. There were 18 candidates. I came in second, and I just couldn't overcome Carolyn's name ID because of Oscar, right? I mean, that's just, you can't pay for it. I couldn't pay for that part.
Legend. Yeah.
And Carolyn's not originally going to run. So that's part of, and then all of a sudden she got in right at the very end. But be that as it may. You've got 2 current city council people running, 1 Democrat, 1 Republican, but it's a nonpartisan race. Shelley Berkeley, former Congresswoman, former University Regent, good friend of mine. We had talked, and I said, if you really want it and your heart is there, then go for it. I don't need to be in a competition with somebody who I think would do a good job. She is Ms. Las Vegas. I mean, she tells a great story that my husband wrote when he ran her first congressional seat, and it tells you about who Shelley is as a person. So she has the history and the common sense, and she was a good representative. So I think she's got the best shot. She can campaign, she can fundraise. And so I think, when you have to have a heart, you've got to want it for the right reasons, not because it gives you power or whatever, but that's always a sidebar. I think she's got the best heart for Las Vegas and would be a good mayor.
Oh, wow. Oh. Yeah, and I want to, as I close, I want to thank you for being a friend, and also for the hospitality that I received at the Las Vegas Convention expansion groundbreaking. Everybody was so nice. Even Tommy White. Yeah. I was like, it was hilarious. I thought he hated me. Then he went back to hating me, but it was crazy. Yeah. And I came in, and Sisolak said to me, he grabs it, he goes, "You're not going to start trouble here, are you?" I said, "No."
You never started trouble. You had, I heard from people because of my opposition that had backgrounds. Yours is in TIFF, right? Then I had another gentleman who was a sports person they understood how it worked. And yeah, I can give you all the numbers and blows your skirt off, but it's, when you're dealing with public dollars that are hard-earned dollars, we have to make sure that they go to the public services, not private sector. And that's just the bone of contention. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
And there you
That's
there
my
you have
motto.
it, Chris. I gotta have you back. And you gotta run. You gotta run again. Run for. My mom is over here saying she's gotta run for.
Oh God, we need her.
She said that year.
Thank you. That's
Got it. Hey, so, Chris,
I'm not that masochistic right now. Go ahead.
hey, Chris, you don't have to move a muscle. I got the button right here. I'm going to keep it in the background so you can,
Okay.
But I want to thank you again very much.
Thank you.
Because I can hold you. I don't want you to say, okay, I got to go, because I'm building it to myself, because I'm eager to ask you more and keep you on for another hour, but I don't want to, do that to you, and I want to eat dinner too. But anyway,
My dog will be.
stick around. Hold on a second.
Take
Everybody,
care.
thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And Chris, stick around. Don't move a muscle.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Please follow what she does on Twitter. All right. And support her whenever she does. And we'll be back later. That ends this broadcast. Chris, don't move a muscle.